What OTC did was legitimize the idea of selling a hearing device online that people could fit themselves. Only for mild to moderate hearing loss, though, and only for adults.
Hey everybody, Dave Limerick in Hong Kong with a new episode of THD Podcast. Thanks for tuning in. Please like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Today we got Andrew Bellavia from AuraFuturity joining us. We're going to talk about TWS and hearables and the convergence of hearing assist and all about that category and what the current trends are. So look forward to getting into that. Without delay, give a shout out to the ALTI Association, our sponsor. They're going to be at the High End in Munich coming up in June. So please go check out their pavilion that they're hosting there. And also the AudioXpress magazine. Andrew's a regular contributor over there. So please go check out his content and everything else that AudioXpress publishes. So without delay, let's say hello. We got Simon in Japan in the morning. Good morning, Simon.
Hey.
And Andrew.
Hey, Simon.
How you doing?
Doing fine. Thanks. I appreciate you having me on. It's fun to be a guest every now and again.
Okay, yeah, great. So I kind of tried to capture a bit of what we want to talk about. But yeah, we want to see how progress is going. Like, I don't remember when that deregulation announcement was made, but it kind of sent waves through the industry. But are we seeing progress in terms of tangible effects that people can benefit from that deregulation or changes in technology that support it as well?
Yeah, it's a very interesting question. And of course, at the heart of it, OTC as it is really a US thing. However, there are other places in the world who are allowing people to self-fit their own hearing aids. You can buy them in Australia, for example, right? And in other places. They don't necessarily have a separate category for it, but in their regulatory structure, they have room to sell a device online over the counter if you. And so it's a very good question because everybody expected OTC to make a bigger splash than it has. I mean, there are some successful companies doing it at a certain level, but it hasn't really moved the needle when you think about on global basis, maybe 5, maximum 10% of people who could use hearing care and hearing devices actually have them. There are very few industries where only 10% of the need is being met, and hearing is one of them. And so how to reach all those people, it's complex. I mean, it involves stigma, it involves access, it involves price, a lot of different things, and that mixture varies around the world. But even if you take Western countries, the adoption rate's pretty low compared to most anything else you'd think of.
Yeah, that's
Good question. So, in regards to the deregulation in the US market for hearing aids, what practical difference, what limitations used to be in place that are now not in place? Is it around the claims that you make? Is it around the actual functional technologies that you can implement?
So it's really under the old FDA rules, you had to be approved as a hearing aid to claim you were a hearing aid. It's really about the regulation. The existing regulation was such that you had to be approved by the FDA to call yourself a quote unquote hearing aid, but there were people skirting that. Apple, for example, before they got FDA approval, had built hearing features into AirPods experimentally. And there were companies like Nuheara in Australia who did everything. They just came so close to skirting the line and selling in the US. But generally speaking, it had to be approved by the FDA. They had to be fit by audiologists. And although there were 6 and then later 5 major companies servicing them, there were other, smaller players around who could meet the requirements and legitimately sell prescription hearing aids. What OTC did was legitimize the idea of selling a hearing device online that people could fit themselves. Only for mild to moderate hearing loss, though, and only for adults. And so that's when you saw official OTC coming out with a limit on output so that you could only serve, moderate hearing loss. You couldn't really serve severe hearing loss with an OTC device.
Interesting. And how about the actual technology that you were, you could or couldn't use? So let's say you came along with some earbuds, but actually they're hearing aids. You just don't make any such claim. What would have been your technological barriers?
Well, so when you're talking about mild to moderate hearing loss, you can have a simpler processing system. For example, a hearing aid suitable for severe hearing loss will have multiple bands, and each one is controlled separately. So you'll have dynamic compression because when you have severe hearing loss, you need to boost quiet sounds, but loud sounds are still loud. So you'll have dynamic compression. So the gain depends on the environmental loudness. And also, the gain will be controlled in each one of those bands. So every sliver of the spectrum is controlled differently. This is where you get into things like noise suppression, so that if I'm in a loud restaurant, the hearing aid will dial down the gain on the bands where there's noise but no voice content,
Mm.
and put the gain in a higher place where the part of the spectrum that's where the voice you're trying to talk to or listen to is. So that's pretty sophisticated processing that always required custom ASICs to pull off with all day battery life.
Right.
Whereas you talk about mild hearing loss, you can have a simpler scheme. You still want some dynamic compression, but you don't need much. You don't have to have so many bands because you're just trying to give people a little lift.
Mm.
And so it can be less sophisticated, but the better OTC hearing aids operate a lot like prescription hearing aids, but just serving the mild to moderate market instead. So there are actually some very good OTC hearing aids out there, and there's rubbish out there and everything in between.
And so
Mm.
that was one of the barriers, if I'm not mistaken, was the custom ASICs that these guys were running that would run on I think the zinc air batteries were popular in the hearing aids or medical grade category. And so a lot of the features that were kind of custom built, there's enough horsepower on just regular chips nowadays, like the Renaissance chip and such we've talked about on this podcast, that make that dynamic management of different bands possible. Is that kind of a good understanding of what's changed?
Yeah, exactly, right. Technology moves on. So, you think about anything involving miniaturized silicon, how much more powerful processors have gotten over time. And so originally, the hearing aid companies would do highly customized low power ASICs in order to get all day wear or multi-day wear out of a device that had, pretty sophisticated audio processing going on. So typically with a zinc air battery, you'd get like 5 days battery life.
Wow.
And of course, it really meant something. Whether they've got more density than a lithium ion battery, so you can get 5 days battery life out of a zinc air. But I mean, they're expensive. They cost money, so you'd rather have five days than 3 days.
Mhm.
But the real revolution came with rechargeable hearing aids. To be able to get one full day wear out of a rechargeable hearing aid and charge them up at night just like an earbud is really something. But power consumption is key. So, very customized processes, running a lot of things in hardware to keep the power consumption down so that you could actually deliver. I mean, when you think about it, these devices are very, very small. I mean, look how small that is, right?
Mhm.
I mean, that's nothing.
Yeah,
And I can squeeze 2 days out of that. It's rechargeable.
right.
And I can squeeze 2 days out of that. And there's no earbud that comes close. And the form factor with the what the hearing aid people call receivers and what we in the audio world would call drivers is actually in your ear canal. So it's a very tiny driver. It's very comfortable, very small, and get something like 24 hours battery life. So that required an ASIC, but now DSPs are getting more powerful, lower battery consumption, more efficient, so that you can start to look at all day wear in what I'd call, I guess, a mass market or a consumer grade device, not a custom device.
Right. Are there other
Sounds like
people
we're
besides Renaissance launching products that could be attacking in that space? Did it?
Yeah, so NXP is also there.
Okay.
Um, Onsemi is there a little bit differently because Onsemi is available in the mass market, but it's more designed specifically to be a hearing aid chip. Whereas what NXP and Renesas and a couple of others are doing, are more general purpose, but powerful enough to be suitable for this application too.
Okay.
When you talk about all day, I just want to curious about the battery power consumption aspect. You talk about all day wear or multi-day. That's excluding using Bluetooth audio through it. Is that right?
No, not at all. I mean, with these, I'll stream, I'll have meetings. Sometimes I'll stream 4 hours in a workday and I'll catch a podcast or two in the evening. So there's a lot of streaming going on there. Maybe a phone call tossed in too, and I still get all day battery life out of them.
Wow. So it must be in the order of 2 milliamps average consumption or something like that.
Yeah, or less.
Mm.
Wow.
So that's kind of the hardware side, but then you've got the corresponding software. For example, you spoke with Absolute Audio Labs, who will do the firmware to run the hearing function on a chip like Renesas. And then you've got iZip, whom they mentioned, doing AI speech and noise separation, running within the AAL platform. So now you've got software companies who can supply anybody with the same kinds of software that were formerly the domain of the prescription hearing aids. And so you really have all the tools in place, an ecosystem to make what I'd call a mass market hearing aid. A hearing aid made all from mass market components and firmware.
Right. Yeah, and Simon touched on Bluetooth there, and I know that you're a big proponent of Auracast, and I think we could see why, like people being able to tune in to this or that in a public space type environment for the hearing assist. It seems like an obvious leap. Uh, should we talk about the progress that's going on with Auracast, perhaps?
Yeah, we can, and because that's actually an area of convergence as well. So, because Auracast has both assistive listening applications and mass market applications. So, assistive listening is when you go, for example, to a live theater, you can tap into the assistive listening system to get clear audio. Because if you have some resonance in the room, for example, people with hearing difficulties will have a much harder time understanding speech in that environment. And so in many places in the world, it's mandatory to have an assistive listening system there. It can be the original system, which was the magnetic hearing loop laid in the floor, that your hearing aids with a telecoiling could pick up. Some people use FM radio-based systems. And then there's now Auracast, and now 3 hearing aid companies of the 5 who can receive Auracast in their devices. But then the other application is mass market, which is what you were alluding to. Go to the sports bar, there's 12 screens, and because Auracast can be multi-channel, I can put a transmitter on every one of those, and I want to listen to the audio of the match over there, I'm good to go. I just find that TV and tune in, and that's not for people with hearing loss particularly, that's for anybody who wants to go into the sports bar and hear the audio for the match over there.
Yeah, it could be a bit distracting with the guy next to you cheering for something and you have no idea what he's cheering for. But anyways.
Yeah, well, it's true, right? But you're sitting at a table with your friends and you're all there to watch the same match, then, you're good to go.
Yeah.
You're good to go. And so that's one of the areas of convergence, because if you start wearing earbuds in a sports bar, you might very well start bringing those same earbuds to the live theater and being able to understand what's going on stage a little better. You're getting introduced to the world of hearing through the back door.
Yeah, that covered like most of my questions on Auracast. Well, what about so for personal use, what about the transmit side? I've heard that progression for the phones and such is not there. Do you have any insight as to when we're going to start seeing Auracast built into phones and such in mass?
Well, depends on which phone you're talking about.
Okay.
If you're talking about the phone that starts with an A, you're out of luck.
Okay.
But my Samsung, I mean, this is an S23, so this is a 3-year-old phone, and I can quite happily broadcast Auracast out of it. So, for example, I want a multi-room speaker system. I can just simply scatter 3 Bluetooth speakers or 4 Bluetooth speakers around the house and have them all receiving Spotify off my phone at the same time, in sync.
Okay. A typical Apple making life difficult. All
Yeah,
right.
well, they have their own system for multiple speakers or multiple earbuds, and they're just not ready to get off it yet. But so yeah, with Android phones you can do it, and there are transmitters large and small available now. So, for example, I can buy a small transmitter about this big,
Mhm.
and I can use that as my Auracast transmitter. So I can take my output from my turntable, feed it to this small Auracast transmitter, and I can throughout the whole house again.
Okay.
So I
Yeah.
can spin vinyl and have four speakers playing it simultaneously.
Okay.
And
Cool.
so those are the mass market home applications for it too. I mean, the other point of convergence is with streaming because there are increasing numbers of earbuds that will personalize your streaming. For example, you buy the earbud, Apple too, you buy AirPods Pro or many other earbuds, you take the hearing test, and now it corrects the sound for your hearing and streaming, which is completely unregulated. It's only a hearing aid if you're correcting the audio coming in through microphones, but if you're streaming audio from Spotify, it's completely unregulated what you do to it. So you take a hearing test and it sets up an equalizer, to counter your hearing, your particular hearing. And that's another way to introduce people into hearing through the back doors, because if you take the hearing test and now all of a sudden your music sounds better, like, all right, there's value in addressing my hearing here.
So yeah, there's some consumer things I think like Audio Do from Sweden and Mimi from Berlin. Are those kind of the ones that I think those are guys doing self-test and then unique profiles. Is that correct? Those kind of
Yeah, exactly. So if you're an earbud company, you can build into your earbud app software from those companies and then take the hearing test right on your phone app, and then it will then create the EQ curve for you.
okay. And then in terms of yeah, I mean the the expansion of the market, you said 10% of the market was only being serviced globally for people with hearing loss. What can be done to overcome that? Is that something that was kind of like because of the control between the hearing aid companies and the audiology market? Or how is that getting broken down? Because I can't imagine that it was very welcome that they came in and got rid of the FTC or the OTC FDA issues. Like, what's happening globally to kind of push this out and make people address it?
Yeah, there are really several things, and you brought up the fear that came in the beginning, and you're right that the major hearing aid companies and a good deal of the audiology community were really afraid of this thing. But in reality, when people are at mild or moderate hearing loss stage, they're not going for professional hearing. They haven't gotten there yet, right? The
Mhm.
famous 7 year wait.
Right.
Basically, people wait until it gets more into severe territory, and then they're out of OTC range anyway. So people, in fact, I talked to a number of audiologists who said OTC was one of their big lead acquisition systems, because people would either heard of it and all the press surrounding it and the press surrounding importance of dealing with your hearing, or
Mhm.
they tried OTC, right? They tried it in their AirPods and they realized there's some benefit here, but it's not everything I would hope for. I'm going to go get a professional hearing check. So the situation has completely changed, and much more people are in favor of it as being the farm team for professional hearing services.
And and beyond like Apple's kind of got some notoriety for pushing the hearing assist. Are there other brands that you're seeing that are kind of supporting that movement to have people pay attention to this?
Well, as a consumer brand, a well-known consumer brand, they're really the biggest one because I mean Sony has a couple in cooperation with one of the big five hearing companies, WSA. So you
Okay.
can buy Sony OTC hearing aids, and they're actually good performing hearing aids, but they haven't made much of a splash. And I'll say actually neither has Apple. I mean, they made us all cry with that heartwarming ad a couple of years ago And after that, they've been pretty silent about it. And that's actually part of the problem because there's a good deal of stigma still around hearing loss. And that in large measure has to do with the fact that hearing loss is still perceived as an aging problem. And at least in Western societies, we have an ageism problem. And so if you couple hearing with aging and you couple aging with ageism, who wants to be, say, a 55-year-old working person, maybe a little bit worried about where their career is at and what will happen, wanting to be seen wearing hearing devices because of that public bias towards hearing loss. And so that's a problem. And yet, really the most comfortable form factor is this traditional hearing aid, the receiver and canal style. I've been wearing since 2018, and if I take a shower in the afternoon, I still forget to take them out before I jump in the shower. I totally have forgotten they're there. When the water hits the microphones, I'm like, oh yeah, right. Fortunately, they're waterproof, but they're that comfortable, and there's no earbud that is comfortable enough to wear all day. There just isn't. And so the traditional form factor is the one that is most comfortable for most people, but it's the one that most obviously looks like a hearing aid. And so people beginning their hearing journey are not right away enthusiastic about wearing such a thing.
Right. Okay. Oh,
Interesting.
just thinking
And
about what else we
To
You
can.
what
know, it
extent do you
open
think that it moves into consumer earbuds, these capabilities?
so that would really be the ideal case because when you have mild hearing loss, oftentimes you'll be fine in a quiet environment. You're at home with your family, you're fine. You go to a restaurant and you're dying. And so a situational device would be really ideal for you. You want good noise reduction features more than anything. So you bring the speech to noise ratio high enough so you can hear. And you only want to wear it for a few hours at a time, so you're not struggling against the all-day comfort barrier. But you almost have the opposite problem. I mean, companies like Bose and Apple have spent a decade convincing us that their earbuds are great for isolating you from the world with increasingly sophisticated noise cancellation, which has been their primary feature. And so they've been telling everybody that earbuds are for isolating one. And now all of a sudden you walk into a social situation wearing earbuds and there's a discomfort factor there. And so this is where I wish Apple would actually be a little bit more aggressive about their hearing features, because not only for the person who would wear AirPods in a restaurant, but for everybody else, if they really had a campaign to educate people about hearing features and AirPods, you who are not wearing them see somebody across the table wearing them, you're going to understand that they're doing it so they can hear you better, not automatically assume they're listening to the THD podcast.
Yeah, it's almost like we need the reading glasses version of hearing assist for those specific use cases, like a noisy restaurant. I mean, I know in a high noise floor environment, I struggle as well. It's noticeable, and so yeah, it's almost like how to market it to get people comfortable that we need the quote unquote reading glasses solution for your hearing.
Is
Yeah,
there,
exactly.
uh,
And that people are culturally aware that people are going to wear their earbuds for that reason. And here I'll share with you that there are actually two studies that show just in the US, there's 25 million people who don't even measure as having hearing loss, but they still have difficulty in noisy situations. Now, if you take that 25 million and say the US has about 5% of the global population, you're talking about 500 million people who, if they go to an audiologist, they'll say your hearing is fine. And yet when they go in a loud restaurant, they can't hear.
Yeah,
And so you can really start to think about earbuds then. You don't even need gain. In other words, you don't need to amplify. Their hearing is fine. What you need to do is knock the noise down. And this is where you get into now that AI speech and noise separation can actually be run in an earbud. You can take the noise down and leave the speech, and a person like that will be able to hear better. And you don't even have to say the word hearing loss. All you have to say is, my adaptive noise cancellation, has when you get on the metro, it's going to kill everything. When you're on the street, it's going to let street sounds in so you don't get hit by a car. When you go into a restaurant, it's going to go into restaurant mode, which is kill everything but nearby voices and let the nearby voices in. You
Yeah.
don't have to say hearing loss at all. You just say you'll hear it your best in any situation, whether it's on the street, on the train, or in the restaurant. And so
And
lots can be done here.
I suppose the form factor is a possibility too, because like with the Meta guys, I saw them at CES, and they had a specific glasses that were meant for focused listening. So it wasn't just about like music, but they had directional microphones that would be on one version of the glasses that just where you're looking, it would amplify that section. So maybe it doesn't need to be all in the ear. It could be kind of on or around the ear as well.
Yeah, so that's also a thing. So what you do is you provide gain, you provide amplification through the speakers in the arms of the glasses,
Mhm.
only facing forward. Now you don't reduce the noise, you're just boosting the speech in front of you. So that does have value, but it also has limitations because you're not reducing the noise.
Sure.
In
Okay.
nuance audio glasses from Messel or Luxottica do that too. Plus, they will provide more gain. Like you can choose your hearing profile on the app and get gain with different shapes for different levels of mild hearing loss. And whereas the Meta glasses are just providing a fixed level of audio coming out, but only forward.
Yeah.
But if you put an earbud in your ear where you can actually reduce noise and then just let voices through, you can accomplish more that way and
Right.
help people with higher levels of hearing difficulty, or I should say auditory processing difficulty, because they may not have hearing loss. They just need the noise down another 10 dB and they'll be fine.
Right. Okay.
So
Cool.
curious in terms of building, again, consumer earbuds that are suitable for this type of application. How about the audio components, speakers, microphones, and acoustic design? Is there barriers to achieving, hearing assist, hearing aid performance from consumer products in that area? Because we talked about processing. Okay, cool. We got various processing options, but how about hardware?
Yeah, so it depends if you're talking situational or all day, because the all day puts a lot of constraints on the design. You end up with a balanced armature driver for an all day wear device because the power consumption is lower, and you can fit it in the ear canal. And so that where you just have the tiny rubber dome in the receiver and ear canal is extremely comfortable arrangement. And then you've got more room to put the hardware above here. But to keep all that small, you've got that design constraint. Now, if you do that though, then you lose music quality because if you want good bass, you've got to have the speaker back vented, as you guys will know. And in fact, at Knowles, when I was there, we had back vented BAs of the same size as this one that deliver pretty good music quality.
Mm.
But you can't have a back vented speaker if you're going to provide a bunch of amplification. Otherwise, you'll get feedback.
Mm.
So you have to have a sealed speaker, and then that limits your bass response. So, so if you want good music quality, then you're going to use a dynamic driver or maybe some of the newer things like the ultrasonic MEMS style speakers, but they consume more power. So now you'll have good music quality, but you're more confined to a situational device. You won't get all day wear out of it.
Mm,
And
interesting.
are those MEM speakers, are those making any progress in the hearing aid category?
I haven't seen them specifically in a hearing aid category as much as in consumer earbuds.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, just curious. There's a big splash about them, but haven't seen much market success yet. Um,
Yeah, so they would be treated more like an ordinary dynamic driver. If you're going to do an earbud style hearing device, that's really where that would fit.
Mm,
And so if I'm doing a situational device, I'm going to include good music quality because I can pop them in to listen to music, or I can pop them in and run them in restaurant mode to hear better in the restaurant. and accept the fact that I may get, 6 or 8 hours total life, that'll be perfectly fine for that kind of scenario.
Right.
Mm.
Okay. So where can people find you to find out more? I know that some shows that's not really in my radar, like UHA, and what are the big events that you go to, Andrew, where people could have a chat with you?
Yeah, so the one that would apply to the broader audio ecosystem would be CES. I go to CES every
Okay,
year.
yeah, yeah. All right. Well, yeah, I think we see each other every year in passing in the elevators. Um, all right, and you guys are doing the This Week in Hearing podcast every week?
Yeah, correct. There's actually several hosts for that. That's a hearing industry podcast, and I'm one of the hosts for that. And I tend to do a lot of the hardware related because I've come from that ecosystem, having worked on TWS and hearing from the beginning of TWS really, and OTC and then prescription devices. So I tend to do the hardware oriented ones, but not exclusively. But it covers the whole range of interest within the hearing and audiology spheres. And
And
then I have my consulting company, AuraFuturity, and you can find me on LinkedIn or at aurafuturity.com.
and I think there's quite a bit of content in AudioXpress, your regular contributor there as well.
Exactly, yes.
Cool. All right. Any more questions, Simon?
No, very good. Thank you.
Okay. All right, everybody. Please we'll put some links below where you can find out more about what Andrew's working on. And yeah, Andrew, thanks for joining us today. We appreciate it.
You're welcome. It was a pleasure to be on the show.
Okay. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next time.